So I think that everybody is here with us and we do not have to wait for other people. So I think that we can start our annual conference. So I prepared some lines, but I prefer to read the lines because I'm very glad, but also I have a great emotion to stay here with all of you. And so I prepare a short speech to introduce this annual conference. So again, good morning everyone. What a pleasure to see you in Athens, the birthplace of democracy. This is an important word for all of us. It is for many reasons that this is the perfect location to hold our 2017 WIN&GALLUP International Annual Conference. Right from the origin, the people have here always put in their effort and observing and giving meaning to the word, starting the long-standing tradition of philosophy, politics, and history. So, thank you for being here to spend with us these 2 days talking about how research is ongoing transition. We'll explore this theme through clients. Thank you for being with us. Workshops. Thank you to the colleagues that run the workshops and some of our delegates who present some papers. So we are in a significant venue. Given the enormous changes that have happened around the world in a year since we met in Marrakesh. It seems like years, but only 1 year ago we were in Marrakesh. For me personally, it seems past 10 years. So now I have white hair, and last year in Marrakesh I didn't have them. So you know why. Changes in the US, in the UK, yesterday in France in another way, but also it is a change. So changes also in Asia. So the Korean Peninsula along with the transforming role of China. So, and of course, further challenges from South America. I'm looking at our colleague from South America. The protest in Venezuela for the economic situation, the downturn condition in Brazil after a brilliant period, and last but not least, the reaction of the government against one of our colleagues, supposed guilty for not having foreseen perfectly the final result of the national election. We are lucky because for France everything went well. So today we have other. The migrant movements from Middle East and North Africa to Europe complete the list of the major changes over the last month. And Greece, too, is involved and can testify to them. So, all these facts influence our economies and markets, and indeed influence our psychological approach and our ability to adapt to the various situations in our business and also in our personal life. It changes the attitudes. This incredible concentration of events in such a short time can have a huge potential to make us cautious, but also to push us to look for new brand solutions. Looking at these changes, we cannot avoid thinking that the Darwin theory is correct, but is easy to say, but difficult to adopt. So, turning to us, the last year of our association has been no less challenging. Disruption affected us too. As you know, our previous president stepped down before the end of the mandate, and we, the board as a whole, were in the position to replace the role and put in place quickly an interim management model to oversee the daily and long-term running of our strong and well-built network. More than 70 countries, covering 5 continents, a long history to remember, and more recent identity to define, keeping an evil kill. So, starting with the trademark, challenging. At the end of last summer, we based our approach on the awareness and the consciousness of the differences within the association and move to clearly identify these groupings, one of them more being linked to the public opinion research, one of them more linked to commercial, and one of them linked to both sides equally. In the end, each member was able to choose the most appropriate position for their company. Bear in mind that this will not affect the possibility to be in a vital and important community as in the past. We also celebrate the 70th anniversary of the association in these next 2 days, remembering that many of us have taken part since the very beginning. And this is the case, for example, of Doxa in Italy, my country. And where we are today, gathered in the same room, ready to share knowledge, insights, success stories to help each other better understand, in the end, our industry, and to move forward into what will be very hard but interesting times. So, on my side, I would encourage working together to face the challenges of the future and keep the prestigious role we always have had in our market. So I wish you all an enjoyable and productive conference. So thank you for being here again. So I would like that Kancho Stoichev will say something to you on GIA side as new formal president of this association. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, dear guests, dear hosts from Athens, dear friends, every one of us has good reasons today to be here. And I will not start enumerating these good reasons. But there is one big reason for all of us to be here, and this big reason is one big man, one big pioneer, one visionary, Dr. George Horace Gallup. We are here today thanks to him, and we are together not only to exchange experience, methods, products. We are here also today to celebrate our 70th anniversary. It happened exactly 70 years ago, exactly the same period of the year, May 7 to 11 in Vauxwood, 47. How many global brand names have such history in our world? In our global world full of global brands? Not so many global brands like our brand. our name has been ranked in the first 100 global brands in the world. And we should be proud of that, because we have a unique heritage to protect and to develop. Vilma just mentioned the challenge around the trademark. It is not possible to touch this subject briefly. Sorry, it's not possible. It's a long story. I even remember one of our long board sessions, some colleague, maybe my good friend Heiner from Product and Mark said, Kencho, why don't you sit down just and put this long story in written? It's interesting to understand what's going on. It took me, well, a little bit of time, but now we have this written story, the book in front of every one of us. This is obviously a subjective view, but in this subjective view, because I published a lot of documents, we can find also a lot of real facts, historical facts of our history. And we will find a lot of names, professional names, the names of our colleagues. And these are the fathers and the mothers of Gallup International, who created all our worldwide professional bodies like ESOMAR, like WAPOR. And we should remember that and be proud of that. I'm 27 years with the association. It's irony of history. When I started, it was here in Athens in 90, very nearby, Vouliagmeni, you know the place. Yeah. And for the last 17 years, I have been servicing the board and have been vice president. And I can assure you that based on my experience, the last year after Marrakesh was the most intensive year for GIA and WIN board, because we were meeting face to face every month, and we were on the phone and exchanging mails every day. What did we achieve? We achieved a restructuring of our association, which, as just Vilma mentioned, reflect in a better way the interests of our members. The dilemma in front of us is not about public opinion or consumer market research. All of us, we study products, sales and motivation, and all of them, they are present both in the political shop at the corner, but also in the commercial shop at the corner. So here we are not divided. We are absolutely united. The dilemma is about the usage of the brand name. Gallup International is the best global brand for social and political research, but not for consumer research, as we know. It might be that our colleagues from WIN are going to cover that gap. That's what we wish. And it's up to all of us these days to make our choice. But the choice is not to be either here or there. The choice has to be to stay together. And the Gallup International Association created a nice option for all our colleagues from WIN to state and to be part of GIA also. And that's the option to stay together, together for growth. Thank you. Emilia, please.
Madam President of WIN, Mr. President of GIA, Professor Vetas, distinguished guests, fellow members of the network. Good morning again to every one of you, and welcome to our Congress. I welcome you actually to a 3-day interesting journey, exciting journey. This will be a journey which aims at broadening our minds and thinking regarding the challenges of our industry from the global transformation. Technology and innovation bring a lot of changes, a lot of transformation to our society, to entrepreneurship, and to marketing practices.
But, above all, we have to realize and feel deep down the significance of this conference and the gravitas of the selected title, Collaboration for Growth. Three simple words that they carry a strong purpose and a motivational vision. These are three words indicating the greatest challenge to guide our conference works. As I've told you yesterday, I urge us all being a superorganism for the next 3 days. A superorganism communicating, synchronizing, creating substantial value, and producing in an admirable and amazing way. In such a way that only one single superorganism on Earth functions and thrives. Please, the video. The bees, as I've told you yesterday, our fellow bees, are amazing creators and creatures. Not only because they work very hard, not only because they collaborate in an excellent way, but because they have a lot of brain power, which adds extra value to the physical effort. So let us put together effort and brains to create our honey future together. I welcome you to Athens, and along with me, the industries of marketing, communication, and research of my country send the greetings to welcome you all to our Athenian conference. The video, please.
Dear participants, dear friends, good morning. It's an honor and a great pleasure to address this global conference. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you and a big thank you for being here in Greece. Growth is the theme of this conference, and growth is the theme and the top challenge for this country as well. The crisis Greece has been facing during the last 8 years has had a tremendous impact on incomes and jobs. But on the other hand, it has been a unique opportunity for review and change. We have definitely taken our lessons as a society and individuals. We have restructured our businesses. We have put our public finances mess in order. We have reinstated our competitiveness in a very painful way indeed, as we were the only one country to implement an internal devaluation and not a currency one. We still have one of the best skilled workforces, and we definitely have the highest percentage on total population of university graduates in Europe. We have put into force the highest ever number of state reforms in a country in such a short period of years. But above all, we have kept intact our societal DNA of optimism and determination, and our ability to stand up after a disaster and succeed. Please do not mistake me. By no means I am intended to deliver a political speech. It is simply my deep and firm belief that we as a country can positively surprise Europe and the globe in the near future. Please stay tuned. For the time being, enjoy your conference and the great hospitality which I'm sure the organizers will offer you. Once again, thank you for being with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. On behalf of the advertising and communications industry, I'm very happy to welcome you to Greece and this conference. Once upon a time, which is a very long time ago, as a young copywriter, I wrote a pay line for Greece, which was Greece, chosen by the gods. This pay line became an international campaign, which I find to be very true even today, especially when it comes down to the beauty of this country, its weather, and the warmth of its people. This is something we Greeks tend to forget when we're dealing with trivial things like the loss of nearly 70% of our market in these years of recession, and perhaps the most prolonged crisis in modern history. So forget about any minor issues you may have at home, lay back and enjoy the conference and your stay in Greece. I look forward to meeting you all today later on.
On my power as a president of the Hellenic Management Association, I would like to welcome all the participants to this international conference. I think that you will have the opportunity being here to exchange opinions, to find new ways of collaboration, because collaboration is the antidote of the crisis that Europe faces in our days. More than that, I'm pretty sure that you will find good opportunities to see the real picture of Greece after 8 years of economic crisis, and you will see that we are still here, we are still existing with all our power in order to make Greece and to return Greece to the way it was 8 years ago. I'm pretty sure that all the outcome of the conference will give all the participants the opportunity to understand 100%.
Dear participants, dear friends, good morning. It's an honor and a
Sorry, just a minute, please.
Very used to this. In all many events this happens. So nothing new, nothing strange. So don't worry. Take your time. We are here. We stay 3 days. So.
dear participants, dear
Even today,
Please.
And I would like to thank Emilia about this showing the bees, how they work. Maybe I'm the only one in this room. I'm growing bees and I produce honey. These are incredible features, the bees.
I asked to Emilia to have the bee with Italy, and I don't know which is the other one, but I would like to take home and to have the bee in my office, because what you said is very significant and important for all of us, no? So, and I would like to thank you, Emilia, because I start with some meaning in my speech, and she goes on the same line, and I appreciate it a lot. And also the your they are not your clients, they are friends, they are colleagues.
They're
I don't know.
colleagues, they're very important persons of the
Yeah.
Greek industry, and they are leading the industry. And each one of them, further to having this official position, this corporate position, they are managing directors of their companies, or they have very high positions in the companies.
So I think that the next time that we come to Athens, Emilia will be one of these. Why not? So would you like to move and then we come back to the...
We have 2 more addresses that I wouldn't like to lose,
okay.
because they are very, very interesting.
Okay.
Are we ready? So what I would propose, probably Titus will continue, and then
Exactly.
we'll start.
So I think, okay, Titus better. Titus? I suggest that
You continue.
Okay,
Yeah, you
so,
can,
so,
you
so,
can.
so,
Yes,
so
yes.
we will have the addresses after the welcoming of Titos. Actually, I now invite Titos.
We go there.
Titos is the managing director. You know him very well, and he will give you an insight of all these challenges that we are facing, together with his welcome to you. I wish to all of you really to enjoy this conference, and we will come back with addresses. Thank you very much.
Madam President of WIN, Mr. brand new President of GIA, welcome. Distinguished guests, my fellow network members. It is my turn now to welcome you in our country and wish you a joyful stay. We are indeed very, very proud to have what we call with Emilia the United Nations of Research in our country. It is fantastic to have all these flags flying in the room. And we are very proud to have you here, not only because you have gathered from around the world, but also because this conference is proof that this country still has the equity and the business value required to make a comeback. The primary theme of the conference, I'm sure you've established by now, is collaboration. I will not be repeating it. I just want to tell you that there is an underlying theme under the main theme of collaboration. And this theme has to do with how technological developments are shaping our work in the future. This is a topic that is going to be more and more a part of our everyday life, everyday thinking, everyday concern in our business. Technology affects our business in more than one ways. Firstly, as our proud sponsors eagerly demonstrate every year, technology is making our business more cost-effective, more productive, faster, and more accurate. This is the obvious way technology is affecting our business. But there is another dimension of technology's impact on our business, less obvious, I think much more significant for our future. This here is my new $100 watch I bought in January and I'm wearing every day. And apart from keeping the time for me, it is also a health tracker, physical condition tracker for me, and daily exercise tracker for me. At the same time, it is collecting in real time my steps, my whereabouts, the kilometers that I walk every day, the stairs that I climb, my heart rate, and the calories I burn. This brand of my watch, which I will not say what it is, sells 28 million of these devices every year. The total market for these devices in 2016 was more than 100 million health tracking watches a year globally. Think about it, please. 100 million people willingly sharing for free, I might add, their actual behavior information in real time. This sample, I have to point out, is at least 1,500 times larger than our end-of-year survey sample, which is 65,000 people, give or take. And this is actual data. It's not declared data. And I repeat, it's for free, okay? So this data is useful to a number of industries, just to mention a few: medical, insurance, sports goods, food supplements, clothes and footwear, and of course advertising. So this data, I estimate, have chopped off from companies like yours and mine at least 10 national UNA studies a year, perhaps even more. And this is just my watch. So imagine what Twitter trends can do if analyzed properly for political and social research. At some point in the future, perhaps there is an algorithm that accurately predicts and no one goes to jail, or Mr. Zuckerberg goes to jail perhaps, the results of elections based on Twitter trends, on Facebook comments, on sentiment analysis, who knows? So, technology is providing to businesses huge volumes of information worth thousands of behavioral and attitudinal studies globally every year, pretty much for free. This in turn is impacting our business in another way as well. We used to compete between us for a project, nationally or international, between research companies, between polling companies. Our toughest competitor used to be a company owned by some sir or another. Now, our competition is becoming much, much tougher. Today, our competition consists of fast-growing startups, of internet giants, of software giants, and of well-established consultants. And the biggest problem is that these people have a lot more money than we do for research, data processing, data collection. This means that our survival, our industry survival, depends on our ability to adapt to this new environment. Are there any opportunities left for us researchers? Of course there are. But to exploit them, we need to understand again from the start where the value of our work lies. What are the new skills that we need to adopt? What our competitive strengths and weaknesses are and are going to be for the future. So, ladies and gentlemen, our industry today stands at a pivotal point in time. This is why, for this conference, amongst our guests, you will find people who are very familiar with technology and its impact on their own business, how technology is shaping their own business, whether they come from the marketing side, or they are technology gurus, or they are consultants, or they are analysts. We have asked these people to present to all of us today and tomorrow, hoping that their experience and points of view will enrich your thinking and understanding of where your business is going. My fellow members, as the sci-fi author William Gibson once said, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. Thank you very much. I would now like to ask Professor Vetas to join us to the podium. Professor Vetas is the General Director of the Foundation for Economic and Industrial Research since 2013. He's also a professor at the University of Athens of Economics and Business and a member of the University Council for the past 15 years. He has been an associate professor at the Duke University of Texas and a visiting professor at INSEAD in France. He's an active researcher, hence we thought of him, calling him here. He is an associate director of the International Journal of Industrial Organization and of the Journal of Industrial Economics. His work has been published in academic journals such as the International Economic Review, European Economic Review, Journal of Industrial Economics, Rand Journal of Economics, and the Review of Economic Studies. He's a creator of step-changing initiatives, a thinker, and a leader in microeconomics, industrial organization, competition, and reputation policy. Professor Vetas has kindly accepted our invitation to open our 70th conference in Athens. Through his upcoming speech, he will deep dive into how the economic crisis is going, not only in Greece, but in comparison to many other European countries.
Good morning or good evening, depending on your jet lag conditions. It's an honor to be here. I'm Greek and I'm an economist. And the combination of these two features has not been very pleasant in the last 10 years. This was supposed to be a joke, not to make you happy. Okay, so anything I'm gonna say, especially if it's gonna disturb you, is just me. Is not due to any organizations I'm affiliated with. Let me, however, say something. Why I'm gonna waste a little bit of your time talking about Greece? There are two issues here. One is Greece is a magnified case of other stuff happening around the world. So it's like a laboratory where we can see things in a larger scale than we also see elsewhere, or earlier than we see elsewhere. The other thing is that Greece by itself is kind of interesting. Somebody counted that on the cover of The Economist magazine from 2010 through 2016, the Greek crisis was the first ranked in appearance, higher than American politics or China or anything like that. Okay, now why was that? There was a question mark back in 2010 whether a weak economy could actually, through a democratic electoral process, convince itself to vote for people who are going to vote for an almost 50% pensions cut, an almost 35% tax rise, and a decrease in public employment and salaries. And the alternative was, if you are not gonna do this, and then maybe you have to leave the Eurozone, could then the Eurozone survive, or would this be the start of a domino effect with Portugal, Ireland, Cyprus, and then Spain, Italy having similar problems? So it was a very crucial question mark. So somehow we chose the first route, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through, I don't have a prepared speech, but I'm gonna show you some data, and I'm gonna talk over the slides. And then I'm gonna collect some thoughts towards the end. Before I embark on this, let me, however, say one thing that perhaps put things in perspective. So, obviously the economic trends are important because any business takes place within the broader economic trends. The last large crisis we had was actually a long time ago. Almost none of you remembers it, okay? So this was the oil crisis going back to the mid and late 70s. Starting then, what we can call the Western world actually got into an almost 25 years of uninterrupted and robust growth. This we have never seen before. So in all of the Western world, we got really used to having this year being about 2% better than the year before. We got spoiled. Now, why was it that we were growing by almost 2% in the Western world every year? There were three factors. One was technology, especially the incorporation of computers into pretty much everything. So an airport today is not the same thing as an airport in 1980. The second thing was trade, the deepening of international trade through local arrangements, the European Union, NAFTA, ASEAN agreements, and so on and so forth, but also through the WTO. And then through trade, you also had the incorporation of mega powers like India and China into the world fabric. And the third thing was peace and political stability, or should I say predictability. Now, most of these factors actually ran out of steam towards the early 2000s. But then, all of us living in democracies and having this idea that we can grow 2% every year, a lot of pressure was applied that we can continue having this, even though the fundamentals were not still there. And the way this was done was by increasing leverage, debt. In some countries, especially in the Eurozone periphery, this happened through getting into the common currency, having your interest rates significantly reduced, and then you just borrow more. In Greece, this happened primarily through the public sector, unfortunately. In other countries, like Ireland, it happened primarily through mortgages. The story in the US is different, and so on and so forth. But world debt has been going up. So when the crisis started, and that was 2007, we didn't start it, remember? there was an issue of how fast you're going to find a new equilibrium. So in some sense, the system has responded positively, both in Europe and in the US. Great Britain is another story, whether you like it or not. However, the concerns are still there, because the question how for the next 10 years we can actually have productivity increases so that we can catch up with this accumulated debt, which is now higher than at any time in the past. This is a very real question. This is a question about the Greek debt. It's a question about the Italian, the French, the European debt, also the US debt. Okay. Now let me show you some graphs. Now this is something similar to what for some of you is your bread and butter. This is measuring the economic climate in Europe. We are in Greece, the line that you see deviates from everything else. Everything else is the average in the Eurozone and in Europe. During the good days, we were pretty much all sailing along. Then after 2007, you see the big dip for everybody. But then whereas everybody else in Europe kind of recovered, we remained very low. In 2014, things were looking quite optimistic. By the way, this is measuring households, so private consumption, as well as businesses. This is an average of the two. Then in the summer of 2015, we thought we didn't have enough adventure in our life, and we started adding some excitement. And then gradually, we we have stabilized, but at a lower level. Now, this is interesting because if you want to predict the future, this tends to be a good forward early indicator of actual economic activity. Now, how about actual economic activity? This is GDP for 3 countries. It's Germany, which you can actually see that they had a little hiccups in 2007, 2008, but then they are more or less in the same trend. You actually see Greece, which was actually narrowing the gap with Germany after joining the Eurozone, but then the crisis almost derailed it. So now the gap has been widening since. And then the bottom line is Portugal, where you see Portugal didn't grow as much after they joined the Eurozone, and as a result, they didn't have to shrink as much. Now, this has prices in there. It has inflation. I'm going to show you another graph without inflation in a second. This is it. This is in current prices. This is in real prices, where in real prices, you actually see the pattern for Greece and the pattern for Portugal. So Greece benefited a lot more in terms of incomes after joining the Eurozone, and then it pretty much lost everything that it had gained. So what you gained from 2000 through 2008, you lost from 2008 through 2016. The pattern for Portugal is more or less flat. They didn't gain anything, they didn't lose anything. You see the Germans actually just running ahead. These are some numbers. So this is, let me try to bore you now for 1 minute. The top line, the first column was the starting point. And the starting point actually was characterized by 2 fundamentally weak areas. One was the government budget, where the government was not collecting enough taxes to cover its current expenditure. So it was, as you can see, 15% of GDP in 2009 was a deficit of the government. But more worrying than that was the gap between imports and exports. Because we had a lot of money, especially through borrowing, we were actually importing a little bit too much relative to what we were exporting. Now, from 2009 through 2014, this was fixed. We were actually the champions in fixing this thing. We were running a lot. Everything was more, this is, for practical purposes, 0. However, as you can see, this was traded off for recession. So we traded off the imbalances, but we corrected them primarily through a recession that brought unemployment close to 27%. Cumulative recession was actually close to 28% from the start of the crisis. These are amazing numbers. So the economy really, really shrunk. Now in 2015, we actually thought we had enough of this, and we got into some political excitement. And now in 2016, and as we speak today, things have stabilized again. The column at the very bottom, at the very end, is the predictions for next year. So the predictions is that the economy is going to grow in real terms for 1.5%. And you have to add another 1.5%, which is inflation, so 3% nominal growth. Things have started looking quite optimistic now. I'm going to run through some of this. Here is the fiscal imbalances, okay? Government spending, where you can actually see that both in terms of reducing expenditure, this happened in pensions, this happened in healthcare expenditure, in pretty much every area, but also in collecting taxes. The two lines are now converging, and it basically means that Greece for the last 3.5 years has been not in primary budget surplus. This basically means that what you're collecting as taxes is actually more than what you are currently spending. And this year, not only we had that, but we had more, not only a primary surplus, but also a general surplus, which basically means after you paid all of your, after you made all of your income and debt payments, you still had something left. So fiscal is actually in place. The other thing is what economists call unit labor cost. So this covers how much you pay a worker per hour, but also how productive this worker is. And you can actually see that we had been losing productivity along with other weak economies after joining the Eurozone, but then we pretty much fixed this. So almost 85% of the loss of competitiveness that we had has now been recovered. However, because the economy has actually shrunk more in the private sector than the public sector, we still have an issue with how we're going to jumpstart this economy. You see that the public sector shrunk, but we still have a greater part of the overall activity that is still controlled by the public sector, and that's not something I like. Likewise, we are still a reasonably closed economy. We see we are the bottom line, almost coinciding actually with France, which is also a pretty closed economy. It is. What can we do? But it's larger, and they have the École Polytechnique. Now, the driver for the recession was investment. And investment basically went to the ground. Total level of investment last year in Greece was about 20 billion euros, when in 2007 it was 65.5 billion euros. So investment last year was less than a third of what it was 10 years ago. So this basically means the economy has imploded, and now there is a huge investment gap that needs to be covered. Why the investment went so low? One was liquidity issues through the banking system, but primarily it was the uncertainty, political uncertainty that finally also fed into overall macro uncertainty. You can actually see here the numbers I have been telling you. So this is not a pretty sight. It also doesn't look good. Now, if you are an optimist, you say there is huge opportunities here. Foreign direct investment has been very, very low in Greece. Okay? Issues having to do with wages were important in the past. This has been fixed now. The thing that remains to be done is to further simplify procedures and regulations. Let me run through some of this. So this basically indicates how the Greek economy grew during the good years. The top line indicates the cumulative increase in wealth. So Greeks for decades have been putting their savings primarily in two sources. So let me do like a 20 seconds Greek history. So coming out of the, we were smart enough after the Second War to also have a civil war for 4 years. And we also had 7 years of a dictatorships for 67 through 74. But going from in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, through this turbulence, the Greek household has been putting their savings, which they have been saving a lot, by the way. They have not been consuming a lot, according to the numbers. But they were putting their savings in two ways. First, housing. So they wanted to build a house. So home ownership is quite high here. Why? Because they didn't trust anything else. They wanted to have a house for themselves. The second thing was the education of their children. And this also explains why we have one of the highest percentages of university graduates and so on and so forth. Now, this was the main ways where savings have been going in this country. The weak currency also contributed to that. We didn't trust our currency. Now, after joining the Eurozone in 2000, 2001, then we started shifting away from these investments and going towards more long-term investments and extrovert investments. However, at the same time, we were also borrowing a lot. So now we had to deflate this economy, and the challenge is how you can actually invest into creating more internationally recognized Greek brands, which, to be honest, other than the areas of tourism and shipping, you only have like 5 or 10 at most that you can recognize internationally. This is a big problem for the country. This also this is like private loans. So private loans was pretty much at the bottom compared, we are the bottom line. It increased, but private loans is not that much of an issue, or I should say it would not have been as much of an issue if the economy on the macro side had not been imploding. But it has, and now the banks have to deal with a lot of bad loans, which they have been dealing with, but this keeps the economy slowing down. But then you can actually do exercises for direct taxation and indirect taxation, public spending. The top line that has been reducing so much is healthcare, actually. This is pensions, which has been cut a lot, but not as much as the economy. So we are still cutting pensions. And this is the trade balance. So this is how much you are exporting for goods and services. So this includes tourism, which has been doing quite well. So this is exporting and importing. So you can see this being rebalancing quite well. So this is not a country that is any longer importing more than what it is exporting. However, and this may be interesting, and maybe you can get a client or two in this country, we see a very interesting deviation between, if I now focus on exports of goods, in terms of volume, things have been going quite well. This is the top line, but not in terms of value, which basically means that you tend to be successful in exporting goods that do not incorporate a lot of added value, that you don't have internationally recognized brands. Something is lacking in terms of marketing, something lacking in terms of where you are in the international exporting chains. Okay, so prices have been now under control. This basically shows that we have actually recovered quite well in terms of unit labor cost, but prices still have a little bit of a room to fall. And now let me show you some graphs that they have so many lines that you cannot understand anything. So I'm going to tell you what is happening, and then you have to trust me. Yes, why wouldn't you? All right, so this is fiscal. This is the government budget. And this is the Eurozone periphery countries, okay? All the sin countries, or according to some, all the fun countries, since Ireland is included. Now, so what is happening is you can actually see is that the 2007 triggered a fiscal crisis in all of these countries, even crises that didn't have fiscal problems before, like Spain. Why was that? This was because international investors became very apprehensive. So they said, I'm going to lose money in the US. Let's see, where is the world going? So they started withdrawing money from pretty much everywhere where things could not go things were not guaranteed to go well. So capital flew from the periphery to the core, and what was the core? Germany, Holland, and so on and so forth. However, you can actually see that this now has been fixed. So fiscally, none of these countries has created any gaps any longer. This is an even more impressive graph. This is the current account, which represents how competitive you are. So you can actually see that all of these countries, after joining the Eurozone, as actually theory would predict, they had a widening current account deficit. So there was money into these countries, they were importing German cars, and as a result of that, the current account actually was getting worse and worse. And through these austerity programs, now this has been fixed. You see the line going down and then going up. So is all well? This is a little bit of an issue. Because all this has been fixed, but through decreasing growth rates, through austerity, some would say. And as a result of that, this basically means that debt in all of these countries is now a more real problem than it ever has been. And even pretty serious countries, like France or Italy, now have debt levels that, unless we start running in real growth very fast, will soon become a problem. Now, debt can be handled in two ways over time. One is that you have a little bit of inflation. 1 or 2 or 3% of an inflation is actually necessary so that your debts are sustainable, because debts are nominal. But in the Eurozone, that we will almost never have. So this means that productivity has to start running very fast. How is that going to happen? So I'm overrunning my time. In the very short run, in the next 2 or 3 years, the prospects for this economy actually look good for at least 4 reasons. We're starting from a low base. The uncertainty about the program, the adjustment program, has declined significantly. It's pretty much the first time that the government and the opposition are pretty much on the same page, whatever else you're going to say. Making everything digital, which we did very fast, is actually reducing the underground economy very significantly. And finally, what you can export, including tourism, looks like it is picking up, because the rest, our environment, which is the Eurozone, is going actually a little bit better. However, domestic savings is low, and that means that you need foreign investment. So there is a litany of things that you need to consider. However, because I really don't want to bore you with how you can fix a country, as if I knew, the issue is this, and I'm going to finish pretty much with that. You need to increase productivity. In order to do this, you need to do supply-side reforms. You fix the public sector, you need to facilitate investment, you need to have better universities and R&D. This is the set of things you have to do. But for all of this, you also need investment. And without investment, no matter whether you fix the engine or not, you're going nowhere. So unless there is more certainty about the architecture of the Eurozone, there's going to be a systematic shortcoming in the periphery. I'm not going to talk about European politics unless somebody wants over coffee later. 2 ads, since some of you are in that business, so I had to do this. One is, there is a book coming out about the Greek crisis and the Eurozone context by MIT Press that we co-edited with 3 people. Kostas Megira at Yale, Dimitri Vagianos at LSE, Chris Pisaridis at LSE, and Nobel laureate. So in case you're looking for sectors, this has 14 chapters for different parts of the economy where there are opportunities. And this is IOVE. We are we were an independent, we have nothing to do with the public sector. We have nothing to do with any private large donor. This has been an important research and think tank institute in Greece since 1975. We have a website and you can check us out. Thank you very much for your patience. I was told by Titus to wait. I think he's going to do something with his watch now.
Watch. I'm watching you. Thank you very much for this fantastic analysis. I have to tell you,
it wasn't fantastic. It was real.
No, it was very real. I've studied economics. It's the first time I really understand what was going on in my country for so many years.
Really?
It's too. You know, it's amazing the amount of knowledge the average person should have these days in order to understand what to vote for. I would just, we're running out of time. I just want to ask you one question. We have people from around the world. If Greece was an experiment in this sense, what are the key things that people should be looking for in their own economies to start, judging whether they're doing well or not, and what are the risks? What should be they should be watching for in their own economies?
Yes. Thanks for the question. I guess I have an hour and a half to address this question. Okay, two things I want to say. First of all, if you go country by country, everybody is going to give you as a recipe that you have to grow through exports. So in every country, that's what everybody says. Now, there is a little bit of a problem with that not everybody can be a net exporter, okay? So you have to find somebody to sell to, which basically means that we have to be looking into productivity. And as I told you at the very start, productivity primarily is based on three things: technology, trade, more trade, and political stability and peace. And it looks like, especially because it's hard to convince people how to vote, I mean, anyhow, that's the beauty of democracy. It's very easy for politicians to start getting into policies that are going to do harm to all the three. Okay? We're going to blame the foreigners, and we don't like trade unless it only benefits us. We don't like academia and universities and research, and political certainty, just throw it out of the window. So I'm a little bit worried about this, but hey, there's always room for excitement.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, first of all, I would like to make an announcement. This is the first conference. As I said, technology is a big part of our life. We're live streaming the conference for those who are left behind in your companies. And you should have received an email about where to look for it. But even for those whose time difference does not allow live streaming, there is a YouTube channel for Alternative Research Solutions where you will find all the speeches of all the keynote speakers. So you can watch it at your own leisure during the next weekend. You will all be examined on this. Now, before I ask Ijaz to come and join us, I would like to continue with the greetings from the industry. Thank you.
As the president of the Hellenic Management Association, I would like to welcome all the participants to this international conference. I think that you will have the opportunity being here to exchange opinions, to find new ways of collaboration, because collaboration is the antidote of the crisis that Europe faces in our days. More than that, I'm pretty sure that you will find good opportunities to see the real picture of Greece after 8 years of economic crisis, and you will see that we are still here, we are still existing with all our power in order to make Greece and to return Greece to the way it was 8 years ago. I'm pretty sure that all the outcome of the conference will give all the participants the opportunity to understand 100% that collaboration is the name of the game for the years to come. Welcome to Greece, welcome to Athens. I hope that you will enjoy a very good conference.
It is certainly a privilege to have with us in Athens such a distinct group of international industry leaders, especially with an agenda to discuss collaboration for growth. For it is a challenge that besets all industries and entire economies, and there are no easy solutions. I was delighted to see as well that the digital sphere is prominent in your agenda, and quite rightly so. Digital has created millions of jobs over the last few years in Europe and can create even more, thereby addressing one of our continent's chronic challenges. And also, it provides consumers with a dizzying plethora of products and services for free through the advertising model. It is a value exchange that keeps evolving because collaboration for growth does not only refer to relations among stakeholders, it concerns equally the relationship between companies and consumers. So collaboration for growth it is. Let's get on with the job. Have a superb conference and welcome to Athens.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy and honored to have been asked to say a few words for the conference and more specifically about cooperation and team working. I would like to add that this event takes place at a crucial time for the Greek society that needs to put all its forces together towards one direction, economic and social growth, which of course is the main objective for a lot of countries around the world. I would like to share with you the results of a survey that was conducted a few years ago with the cooperation of the Padio Panepistemio. Both public opinion and managers put cooperation as a factor to help the country get out of the crisis at the third level, 33% and 43% respectively, after meritocracy and social sensitivity. But the most important finding from that survey was the crucial path towards cooperation, which I personally believe is the DNA of team working. First, we have to protect dignity. Second, we have to establish a frame of trust. And finally, having them given, we can reach cooperation. Thank you for your time. And as the president of SEDEA, I welcome with great pleasure the conference in Greece.
So, Ijaz, you're hosting the next session.
Good morning, everyone. We've had a wonderful introductory session. This particular is inspiration from research. So actually quite a bit inspired also from the success of Greece to come out of bad times into better times. We will round up the session with 70 years of opinion and marketing research. So you'll first see three very good pieces of how research is today, and then we'll round off in the company of the three major leaders of this global research industry. We will have SMR with us, we will also have Vapor with us, and obviously we have Gallup International Association and WIN with us. In 1947, 70 years ago, all three were instituted by the same kind of leadership, which today, as Tito's demonstrated this morning, is looking for solutions to change. 1947 was also a great change. And so is today. So we found a solution then, so I was greatly inspired actually, Tito's, by your description of the situation this morning. And we have three speakers who in some ways respond to that change. So the first is very responsive and financial. It's the digital era in banking. And we have a wonderful speaker here from the Alpha Bank of Greece. We followed up by another speaker from a big change on the world scene, which is China, as indicated. And so we'll have from Dr. Xinwan Wang, who is from China but has also lived in Europe for many years, studied at Oxford, currently teaching and researching at the University College in London, an anthropologist, and she will talk about social media in China, partly based on her over a year in the industrial city, living with the workers in China and studying social media. And we have our third speaker will be head of research at the BBC, Nick North. And as we were talking at breakfast this morning, BBC is also threatened a little bit by Facebooks and others, and also has an opportunity of how to carry their own media in this new changing media world. So I will begin with our first speaker, Mr. Damiano Charlampides, who has a brilliant career in the banking, as you saw in this book. Their CVs are here, and I'll now ask him to kindly speak.
Good morning from my side. A very welcome from my side as well here in Athens, Greece. What I have prepared for you this morning is just to try to show you how digital is affecting our life, and more specifically in the banking sector. We'll see some global trends, what is going on in the world in this field. Then we will pass through the transformation that is taking place in the banking sector in general, not only here in Greece. And we close this presentation showing you what all 4 Greek banks are doing right now in this area. Look at this picture. A few years ago, nobody would dare to turn their back towards a candidate president of the United States. What we see here today is a reality. You see how digital technology is a part of our life, and this goes on in every aspect of our life. Now, why digital is a priority? You see some figures here showing that, for example, 90% of all senior leaders are dealing what is called digital technology today. Not only this, 60% of these, they have digital as a priority within their agenda. They include this into the strategic plan of the companies. Why they are doing this? They are expecting at least 20% growth to come out of digital, or 15 to almost 20% cost reduction. These are the main reasons why everybody is going into the digital space. And I think this answers the question that Professor told us this morning of how to increase the productivity. This is one of the main reasons why everybody is there. At the bottom of the slide, you see what the banks are doing globally. There is not a single bank that, at least I know, that they are not into this journey. And I'm saying the journey because it's not something that happens overnight. You are talking from 2 to 3 years at least for such a transformation. And of course, there is an expectancy of serious investment. 3.1% of the revenues is invested in order for this to happen. A few numbers, what digital channels are doing globally. You see on this graph that there isn't a single area in the world that the digital is growing in terms of total active customers. An active customer here is defined that somebody has used web or mobile in the last 90 days. And you see that there is a constant growth in every part of the world. What is most important is this slide. From the left-hand side, you see what the actual web users are doing, while on the right-hand side you see what the mobile is doing. There are parts of this of the world today that you see that the web is either stagnated or moving down, while mobile is constantly moving up. So the future is mobile. You should have this in mind in whatever you are doing in your world. People that they are moving into mobile, they will never go back on the web. And we are talking about financial services here, not something else. Now, in terms of innovation, there isn't a single piece of innovative idea that has not been combined into banking. Today, in most of the application, you can get into just using your fingertip. There are face recognition techniques that can verify your customer ID in order to get into your banking, or voice recognition techniques that are widely used across industries. I'm just going to show you a video next with one application, one mobile application of something that was, I think in the past, nobody would even imagine that can get a mortgage through a mobile app. Let's see this video, please.
Dreaming of home ownership and want information right at your fingertips? King's Mortgage Services, your local experts in home loans, has a free app for that. You'll have information right at your fingertips. With the new app, you can discover your perfect home, calculate your monthly mortgage payments, get refinancing loan calculations, determine what you can afford, and save your loan calculations on the results screen. The app is also right there for once you have a loan in process with King's Mortgage, you can track your loan status and progress. Scan and send necessary documents and sign up for push notifications to get real-time updates. You can also learn more about the home buying process. Download the free King's Mortgage app today at your app store or talk to your King's Mortgage loan officer. King's Mortgage Services, the best team to make your dream of home ownership a reality.
There is another one as well that you can start by taking a picture of a house that you are intending to buy. By the time that you are at home, there is an email at your inbox saying if you are eligible or not to get a loan for this house. So technology is here. Technology is used in every aspect of our life, as we said. Let me tell you a few things about what I'm showing in this slide. We as banks, we have apart from our own competition, we have the players, some global players that they are moving into our space as well. You see some very familiar names on the left-hand side of the slide, Google, Apple, Samsung, PayPal. They are already in the payment arena. I just want to tell you one more thing. Facebook have acquired a license, a payment license, a pan-European payment license. They are next to launch payment services as well. So our competition is changing from one side. The other side, you see what we are calling in our industry fintechs or digital disruptors. Fintechs is, for those that they don't know, is that companies, startup companies that are using with technology, dealing only with financial services. We see some, just having an example there of a digital bank. It's called Number 26. They launched in Germany. They are global now. You can open an account with Number 26 over the phone. You don't have to be in a branch at all. They just do a video call with them for they're just taking a picture of your passport, and within 20 minutes the whole process you have an IBAN in your email. These things are reality, are here. It's a little bit more technical. I don't want to bore you with some of our banking details. There is a European directive, it's called PSD2, is a payment directive which is coming out, is going to be a reality in our lives in 2018. Practically, what does it mean? This means that as banks, we are obliged by law to open our accounting process, if I say, to any payment institution would like to have access to it. What does this mean in practice? This means that you can pay to any commercial e-commerce site by using your own account and without using your credit card or other credentials. It's supposed to be a big change in our industry, and that's why I'm having this slide over there. The whole fintech community are working to provide this kind of solutions, which we are going to see pretty soon. Now, moving into the digital transformation itself, what we are saying here is that there are three pillars of what a bank a typical bank would perform. There are three things that everybody is looking for. One is customer experience. It is our goal to constantly improve the customer experience, and this there are very few ways of doing it. One is the omni-channel approach, as we say, the ability the customer to have the same kind of experience irrespective of which channel approaches the bank, either the physical channels or the call center or the internet. Of course, the task there is the reduced servicing time. There are banks in the UK today that they are saying that they can provide you with a mortgage, a process that in the past it would require many days. You can have a mortgage in less than a few hours today, and I'm talking the whole process, including the interview of the customer. The second pillar is the profitable growth. Today's presentation, I'm going to tell you a few things exactly regarding this pillar and how we are using data and analytics in order to improve the understanding of our customer needs and then moving into the digital era. And the last pillar is the operational efficiency. Here we are talking about the improvement of processes and how to make sure that things are done within the bank in a much faster way. And of course, if it is faster, usually it's cheaper as well for us. There are a lot of technology involved in here, and again, increase productivity. Probably you have heard about artificial intelligence and robotics. This is the area that these things are taking place today, even in banking, I can tell you. Right, CRM. CRM is an advanced analytic is an area that everybody is going to, even banks. We are from the last to enter this space, but I can tell you that we are using it today very heavily. You have here various sources of information that adds to what we call the customer profile, from product information, from transactions, how many transactions a customer is doing, what kind of transaction is doing. Of course, marketing and communication is attached to it. The risk and the credit scores of the customer, since we are a bank, this needs to be incorporated together with the services, which means how many times the customer called us or logged in order to find information. Of course, the demographics, which is something that was always there. All these kind of data, they produce what is called the big data pool that we have to dig into it and try to make sense of what a customer needs. And I'm saying this because you see that in today's environment, the customer segmentation is getting more sophisticated. In the past, we had the traditional segments, mass market, affluent customers, or small business. This is something very typical for a bank. Today, you need a lot more than this. You need to have the life cycle segments, like a customer, it could be mass, but is it a student, is it a young professional, is it family, is retired, on what? As well as you have the behavioral segments, like traditional, is using his card very heavily, is a tech lover or not. All this information we have to get out of our data, which is existing within our databases, and use them in order to have the lifetime value of analysis of a customer, to be able to predict if this customer is ready to churn into another bank or not, or to cross-sell and upsell different products. So big data analytics is a significant part of what we are doing. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how social media can work in a bank. You see here a Polish bank that they have created a Facebook page. Practically what they are doing here, there is a native Facebook application. A customer in Poland, through online support via video and an audio and text channel, as I was telling you before, is able to open an account directly from Facebook. Who would imagine that something like this would be possible in the past? But I can tell you this happens today. I'm going to show you another example. This is a real example from Greek reality, how social media can be used in order to assess the risk profile of the customer. You have one customer applied for a credit card or for a loan. At the same time, he advertises in his Facebook page, I'm going to translate you what he says here in Greece, please ignore your payments to banks. We have a customer that doesn't want to pay his loan. At the same time, he has applied for a loan himself. So this information exists there, and definitely you can use it and get out whatever information you can get. Now, a few things about the Greek banking. Here, what we're saying is that digital technology in Greece is growing fast. You see the numbers are constantly growing. 72% they have access of the Greek population. They have access to internet. A significant percentage of them on a daily basis. They are using it through any kind of media, like smartphones and tablets as well. They are consuming a lot of internet, although the content is not that rich. The Greek content on the internet is not that rich. However, you see news, music, video, and social media is growing. These slides just compare the international benchmarks on how they're using a customer is transact with a bank. What you see here is that basically we still are a cash society here in Greece. A lot of transactions, and the majority of that is taking place either on the ATM or the branch, which means that there is potential for digital growth. And the challenges that we are facing, and I can tell you this is across the whole sector, is we have everybody is going through a digital transformation. However, don't forget, as Professor said, that we have an issue with bad loans. This is there. We don't forget this. At the same time, though, we want and we are constantly improving the customer expectation. We are digitizing. We are preparing for PSD2. As I told you before, we are getting ready for competition, and of course, we are restoring customer trust. This is my last slide saying a little bit about our bank. We are moving very fast in this area. We have, of course, a web banking, a mobile app, which you can get through your fingerprint. Recently, all Greek banks, they have issued the person-to-person. You can transfer money from one account to the other only by having the phone number of a person and not knowing his IBAN number. And we have various solutions for my wallet, storing your cards, etc. Thank you very much, and I hope I didn't bore you too much.
Thank you very much. Very informative, maybe even at a personal level for many of us. Social media, is it marketing research or social research? We'll soon discover it is also social research. So Dr. Xin-Wan Wang, would you please come up? She's a very, very talented young lady. I've had a long discussion with her on the phone. We've also requested her as an academic to give a workshop on Tuesday morning. So Chiara will make some arrangements for those of you who are interested. So a short presentation for now, but a longer time, an hour, with Dr. Wang on Tuesday at breakfast. Dr. Wang, please.
Hi, everybody. It's my honor to talk here. And I think the reason I was invited is because this project, this is why we post a global social media impact project. And oh, by the way, I didn't study at Oxford. I spent 1 year in Cambridge, but most of the time is with UCL, so show my loyalty with UCL. I did my PhD research with this big project, and well, economists said it was one of the biggest or most ambitious anthropological research about the global use of social media. So we have 9 anthropologists spent 15 months in a small town in 9 different small towns in 8 different countries. So this project is just finished. It's a 5-year-long project, and we have our own website, YouTube channel, and we have our MOOC, free online e-learning course, and we also issue 11 books, which all like open access, so you can just download for free from UCL Press. So that is our main book. We call it How the World Changed Social Media. So it's not a round title, because usually people will say how the social media changed the world. But for anthropologists, we do think that the culture, the society, the personality, they change the way of using of technology. So we call it How the World Changed Social Media, and we do the global comparative study to see all the issues, as you can find in the book, about the technology and education, or the comments, the politics, the visual, or the selfie. What does that mean? The selfie always means self-love. Actually, it's not. So, of course, I will leave all the details if you're interested to tomorrow morning's workshop. Okay, talk more about today's topic is more about social media in China. And of course, China is huge. I can't represent the whole China. And even within our project, my colleague Thomas, you can see on the video, that is the screenshot of our MOOC course. We found like even the North China and South China, the use of social media is so different. So I definitely won't represent the whole China situation. But basically, some basic fact, because maybe not every of you are familiar with Chinese social media, and because of the great firewall, all the famous global social medias cannot be easily used in China, like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. So in China, the mainstream social media is QQ and WeChat. And of course, I think some of you are familiar with something called Weibo because it's widely reported in the West. But Weibo is declining. Weibo is like the Twitter, Chinese version of Twitter. It's more like the celebrity hub. But for ordinary Chinese people's use of social media, you can see the penguin, that is QQ, and the WeChat. So the figure is not the most latest, but I just double checked this morning. So still, like this year, the monthly active user of WeChat is already 899 million, so it's more than half of the Facebook's global cover. So it's huge. But what I want to study is not just about figures, but about daily life, how ordinary Chinese people use this social media and what kind of difference made in their life. So that is my field site. I spent 15 months in a small factory town in southeast China, and as you can see, it's a very fast developing factory town. 10 years ago, it's just a farmland. And within 10 years of the intensive industrialization, more than 60 massive factories just pop up among the farmland. So you can see the very fashionable modern shopping mall, and on the background is still farmland. And tens of thousands Chinese rural migrants, the peasants in inland China, they flood in this coastal area to work in factories. So they are the human face behind Made in China. And I'm going to study how they use social media. So probably for you, they're the least possible people who can use digital. But my research tells me they are the most social media people in China. Why? Let me tell you why. Okay. That is the main social media, as I said, the QQ. And that is the average number of people the factory workers have. Oh, by the way, the Chinese rural migrants not a small group. There's more than 250 million Chinese migrant workers. So had this number of people been the population of a country, that will be the fourth biggest country. So it's not a small group. And that is, most of them, they are very young, and there's a new generation of migrant workers. So in my factory town, most of them are born after 1980s, so in their 20s, and they dropped out of school around 14 to 17. So the schooling time is very limited, and they labor in factories, and they embrace social media totally, and that is the average number of friends on their QQ. And as you can see, they come from the rural China, which usually based on kinship or regional relationship. You rely on your fellow villagers or your family relatives to find job. But online, they intentionally not connected with their family. So that is kind of shock for me, because I thought they have a lot of social discriminations. They should rely on social media to connect with their hometown. But actually, they abandoned their hometown because for this new generation of Chinese factory workers, they want to embrace the modern China. They want to be modern, so they don't want to connect it with the homeland, which is regarded as backwards. So on their social media, it's actually used as a modern place to explore all the modern practice to make friends. So I won't go the case study, but as you can say that people in cities all have many chances to meet new friends, and they have many friends. So the friendship, the very concept of friendship, which introduced by social media, is actually very interesting concept, because it is a modern concept. In traditional China, the friendship is not valued. Basically, you valued kinship. You valued people in the same community. It is in the modern time when the capital force detached people from the land, people start to work in the situation with people from all the cities, all the countries, then they develop friendship, which is not based on kin or regional relations. So the friendship itself for the factory workers is a very important way to experience the modern China. So that's the reason, as you can see, online, actually there's almost 20% contact, they are online strangers. They use social media to meet people, to develop friendship, and that is the main use of social media. And also this quote said, they feel online the friendship is very pure. Of course, I think many of you have heard about worries, both in academia or popular reports that Facebook friend is not real friends. And we're so worried that the online relationship is no longer authentic. But here in China, we find for those rural migrants, they found the pure relationship online. Why? Because we missed the point. The mediation of technology is by no means opposite to authenticity. Because for anthropologists, we do think all the human beings, we are animals wrapped in culture. Culture is the biggest mediation of human being. So it's always, the relationships is always mediated by social norms, by personal expectations. But for those people, offline, they suffered from their low social status, but online, they can really play out their real self. So it's actually it's challenge to the mainstream argument about the use of social media in social relationship. Actually, it can lead, they play out the real personal relationship. Okay, have a guess, what those pictures? Yes, it's wedding, but can you imagine that is the mainstream postings of Chinese factory workers. So those photos, they're regularly similar photos like the Fantasyland, the European style weddings or honeymoon photos or fast car or sexy lady nightclub. These kind of photos is frequently regularly posted on their personal social media profiles. And why? Because for them, offline, they have no chance, basically very limited chance to join the modern life. And of course, the modern life, the images which they witness in their migration is very strong, but they can only practice and play out on social media. And that is where the physical place, the factory girl posted those fantasy photos live. So the whole family with 5 family members stay in these 2 single rooms with another 5 rural migrant families, and they only have 1 toilet to share. So I remember I was like, the bottom bed is which she shared with her little sister. So in summer there's no air conditioner, in winter there's no heating. I remember sitting there and watching her, and she is like playing her mobile, totally focused, totally ignore me, and the temperature is over 38 degrees, and I was like sweating like a pig, and she totally ignored me. And after a while she looked up and see me, and she said something really become the key question of my research. She said, life outside the mobile phone is unbearable, huh? Gee, this, yeah. Life outside the mobile phone is unbearable. That quote really made me to force me to think, where do people live? In their case, actually, I witnessed a dual migration. It's from rural to urban, that is the physical migration. But actually, the most effective migration is from offline to online. And they really give us a very poignant and strong example that how social media is used in our daily life. Okay, I will speed up. And another thing is maybe more to do with economy is I found the smartphone is really, really being the king. So in that way, the digital divide, the gap is largely very dramatically reduced, because more than 80% of the local smartphones are sold to the factory owners, the factory workers, and they are low income, but they're very willing to spend their monthly salary to buy a smartphone. And smartphone is not only like social status, but nowadays it become more and more like regular daily items. And smartphone for them is really a digital leapfrog, because before they never used computer, they never own a personal camera, they never have the game player. But for them, once they have this smartphone, they have everything. So they have a big jump to the digital era, and that is the painting I made, the Chinese traditional painting. I describe the scene that the whole family have lunch at the dinner, and they're using this small screen as the TV. So they really use much of this digital device to the maximum they can gain. Again, speed up. It's about and WeChat is about the digital business. And as you can see on the screen, the ads, people sell their family ads on WeChat. And you probably heard about the WeChat red envelope. So last month, I spent 1 month in China, and I swear I didn't touch any cash or bank card, everything by WeChat Pay. So WeChat is no longer social media. It's combined with the banking, with everything. So the red envelope is also represents it's a very rich Chinese anthropology. Is about the gift economy. So in China, the social relationship is always mediated or communicated or mingled with money. So the family union is always economic union. So when we study the money and social media in the West context, people think money is a very impersonal thing. So it can only be talked in the business environment. But in China, money, the red envelope with cash inside the red envelope, is always the traditional way to express love and affection. So it's a very culture difference. So a successful sample in China cannot necessarily be copied by the rest of the world. It's also because the culture background, the tradition of money is different. Anyway, so I will stop now, and that is my book. It's Social Media in Industrial China, and if you scan the QR code, you can download the book. And just one sentence is like the same project. So the previous project is about social media and global study of social media, and my coming project, which I will start next year, is a European Research Council project for 5 years, and we will start a smartphone globally again. So with the countries in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, but this time we'll focus on the aging population and use of smartphone. Not really old people, but like people from 45 to 70. So those people try to figure out how to become in the process of aging and the use of smartphone. I think somebody mentioned like self-tracking. So we also will look at those mobile health and self-tracking and use of smartphone and aging population globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As I said earlier, Chiara will circulate that she will give a breakfast workshop tomorrow morning. And so those of you who are more interested, while I call Nick North, please, to come, I was asking myself a question: who are we? Are we market researchers as demeanors? Are we social researchers, as Dr. Wong gave her speech? Are we ethnographic researchers from the methodology she described, or media researchers? In some way, all four. In some ways, all four, and they blend into each other as banking and social media blend into each other, as the Chinese society and its economy blend into each other, and as Nick North will tell us, the global audiences that he, through the BBC, gets known of around the world, and how that, possibly you'll refer to that, how that blends in with social media and what we do. So Nick North, head of the BBC research, please.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Ijaz, and thank you, Kancho, for inviting me. It's a real pleasure for me to be here today to celebrate with you 70 years of Gallup International. I started my career at Gallup, so I'm very pleased to be here. 25 years ago, started working with Kancho. That feels like a long time ago now. And I found myself at the BBC after a career in research. And, okay, Ijaz told me to be quick and to try and tell you everything I want to tell you in 12 minutes. Now, I'm not sure that's going to be possible, but so I may have to skip a couple of slides, so forgive me if I nip across some things. Just a short introduction to the BBC, and then the role that research has played at the BBC. I want to talk about how the role of research and the role of data are changing in the way that we make decisions, and particularly how data is now moving beyond the insight that we gain from it and is being embedded in multiple business applications within a digital world. And I hope I'll be building on what we've already heard this morning about the efficiency of digital, the opportunity of digital, but also perhaps the threat of digital to some of our traditional ways of working. So the BBC is consumed by 97% of the UK population every week. It's chosen 150 million times a day, be those visits to the website, people tuning into the radio or watching television. And we reach over 300 million people around the world globally through World Service and our commercial enterprises. In the UK, we meet a variety of needs throughout every day. That's why almost everyone in the population will use the BBC at least once during the week. So BBC Radio is tuned in the morning when we want to wake up. Sometimes it's people's alarm clocks. Sometimes it's our need for information first thing in the day. We keep up to date throughout the day using mobile apps, and radio keeps us company through the day. And then we unwind in the evening to television and catch up on programs that we might have missed on the iPlayer. And so it meets multiple needs through the day. And what we've learned over the last couple of years is that the strength of relationship that people have with the BBC is improved if we can strengthen the number of different contacts that they have, the time that they spend with us, but also those different needs that are being met throughout the day. So just a bit of context and to sort of set the terms of reference for what we are trying to do as researchers at the BBC. The mission of the BBC is fundamentally to inform, educate and entertain the population. We have public purposes. We're funded by a license fee that every household that has a television must pay. Therefore we're not driven by commercial imperative, but what we do, the contract that we have with the British population is that we will provide them with impartial news, we'll provide support for learning of people of all ages, encouraging people to become more digital. We'll present the most creative content that we can, bring the communities together and represent the communities back to themselves, and also represent the UK to the world. We have values as well, but one of the values that I want to call out, I won't read through them all, but is to put the audiences at the heart of everything we do. And that's really important, and that for us is we wear our BBC badge with pride, because on the back of it says exactly that. And that places research at the heart of what we do. Now Gallup International can be proud of being 70 years old. Well, BBC Research is 80 years old, so but it's not a competition. It's not a competition. We first started in 1936 with the Listener Research Department that was set up to understand what people enjoyed, what they listened to, and that expanded to capture television. On the right here, you won't probably be able to read it, but it's an extract from an audience research report from 1963. There was a new program broadcast that night called Doctor Who. This was the first broadcast. It got about 10% audience share. Well, that's not bad. And then we also measure what people thought of the program. And for everything that we measure how many people watched, but also what they took away from the program, what they enjoyed about the program, what they learned from the program. And we've been doing that really ever since. And this program, it was reasonably positive. They thought it should appeal to adults as well as children. And so it has proved. The pictures on the left are real pictures of BBC interviewers. These are from around the 1950s, but you can see there it looks like a very good sample. Tractor drivers, as well as housewives and postmen. And that process has been going on. That process has been informing the decisions that the BBC has made really ever since 1936. But we are faced with new challenges today. We have a new generation that we need to provide valuable services for, but the choice that the younger generation has before them is unprecedented. YouTube, Spotify, Netflix, Facebook and so on, all competing for time that previously would have been consumed by traditional media. So we need to rethink the value that we deliver to all households, to all people in the UK, and particularly focused on the younger generation. When we think back to our public purposes and the mission to inform, educate and entertain, our goal is ultimately that every household in the UK should feel like the BBC is a good thing, that they support the BBC, they support the licence fee as a measurement of payment, and they support the price point of the licence fee. That is fundamentally what we are about, and delivering the public purposes along the way. So we've worked very hard to understand what it is that drives support for the BBC. And therefore what we do in terms of the metrics that we build for all our services are all contributory drivers of fundamentally driving support for the BBC, if you see what I mean. So, and what we've learnt is that time well spent with the BBC is the most important driver of support, which is perhaps not surprising. But we also have learnt that the number of connections that people have, and that reflects back to the needs that I talked about earlier, the number of connections that people have throughout the day strengthens that support. And then it's also about memorable content that really cuts through. So it's not just about volume, it's about time well spent. And now is the challenge to try to understand how can we understand what exactly does time well spent mean? And time well spent online might be a shorter amount of time than a long time. If I'm looking for something, the quicker I find it, the better. And we also need to be conscious of not building bad habits where people look at their mobile phones 500 times a day. We don't want to do that. So we have to think about what is the right amount of time that we want for people to spend. How do we do it? This chart's come out looking a bit peculiar, but in my team, in the audiences team, we have various different functions to help us along the way. We have the research team, who are collecting and analysing and reporting audience data. We have the planning team, who are really our content strategists. They're translating the insight that the researchers have gained, turning often those kind of quantitative findings into something that the producers and the commissioners will understand. So bringing the data to life with stories that will engage the producers who live in a creative organisation. The measurement people who are looking at understanding exactly all those metrics that are so important to driving support for the BBC. And an increasingly large number in the team are in data and analytics, where we're looking at the behaviour of our signed-in audiences, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And finally, our audience services team, who run a call centre. If you want to call in and complain or ask about something, they're there to help you answer that question. We get something like 250,000 people contacting us every year, and to which we respond as best we can. To help us along the way, we have a research roster. We have over 50 companies on our research roster. And I should say, you know, we're perhaps not the most generous client in the world in terms of the money that we pay to our agency partners. We are a publicly funded organisation, and money is tight, and it is our responsibility to be most cost effective. However, we value our research partners greatly. Reputation and brand is very important in the decision making. So, for example, a brand like Gallup International, I mean, looms large in the consideration set of the BBC around the world. But in the UK, we have multiple needs that we need to fill. We need behavioural economists, we need econometricians, we need ethnographers, we need people who understand the different nations that make up the UK. We need online communities, people who are experienced in working with children, and so on and so on. So a wide range of specialisms, all of which we want to bring to bear on the decisions that we make in the BBC. And we value our research partnerships greatly in that. But as I say, I think that the money that we're spending on pure research is probably, as a share of all the money that we spend, decreasing. As we move towards a world where we try to understand more and more about how people are engaging with our content across all platforms. And so here, an example of what we're doing. where we're investing in a new measurement panel with audio meters, digital meters, but also, most importantly, we're bringing data in from our own servers, our signed-in users, who are encouraged to register, and then we can track all their behavior across all applications and all content and services that they consume online. And we can bring that in together with research, and then increasingly with third-party data, be it from Facebook or from a TV platform, and integrate that into a more complete understanding of the audience. And that signed-in data that we have will then enable us not only to understand the audience, but can then create new products where your experience of the BBC is personalised to your interests, to your passions, to your previous behaviour, so that if, for example, you're a tennis fan, when you look to BBC Sport, you may get the latest tennis headlines. Someone who's a golf fan may see a very different experience on BBC Sport. So the data that we collect, the understanding of the audience that we collect, the segments that we build in our team, then actually are not only driving insight, but also driving new products and services to enhance the experience of the BBC for a digital world. I'm going to stop there. I've got lots more, but Ijaz is sitting and waving things at me. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you very much, Nick. Actually, a lot of us do research for his organization, and it's so thank you, Nick, for letting us know that it doesn't get put on a shelf, it actually gets used, and used in a very interesting way. The last part is as much substance but more ceremony, and sometimes ceremony also gives a more powerful message. And for that I'd invite Mr. Finn Raven in particular. He's traveled all the way to join you in this celebration as Director General of the SMR, our industry organization in the marketing research area. Please, Finn.
Thank you.
Also founded in 1947, so it's also their 70 years. Many of us will go to Amsterdam to celebrate their 70 years of SMR again fairly soon, and he's so kind enough to come. There's another organization. This is the Opinion and Marketing Research Organization, and there is an opinion research organization. Fortunately, our own Marita Carballo has been elected as the president of WEPOR this year. So Marita, please. So she represents us, but also as much the WEPOR, World Association of Public Opinion Research, as president-elect of that organization. And I should also call upon Vilma Scarpino and Kancho Stoichev in the fourth chair. Thank you very much. So we have... Finn asked me, are we also going to speak? And I said, ceremony is more powerful than your speech. So there'll be co-chairing. We will have a photo to represent that. But the speech they're going to give for a minute from Dr. George Gallup. So George Gallup's in own voice. Please.
We believe that it is good to spend 40 seconds with the voice and the face of Dr. George Gallup. We found an interview with Michael, and then Michael will tell us just 2-3 minutes the latest developments in our association.
Dr. Gallup, how did you get into advertising and advertising research?
Well, John, I think as much by accident as by design. In the summer of 1922, when I was a junior at the University of Iowa, I was hired as an interviewer by the Darcy Agency in St. Louis. And they were working on the project on a great survey of St. Louis for the St. Louis Globe-Democrat. And I was an interviewer, and my assignment was to find out, by going house to house, what readers what newspapers people were taking and what they read in those newspapers, what they liked. I went back to the University of Iowa with the resolve to devise a better system, and eventually that became my doctor's thesis, a more objective way of measuring reader interest.
Yeah.
Michael Dice will also talk about the 70 years.
I'll be very short. We're talking about 70th anniversary, and there's a very famous quote from a famous Austrian composer, Gustav Mahler, and he said, tradition is not the worship of the past, but it's the passing on of the fire, yeah? The idea of the association. So we don't want to talk about the past today. We want to give you an idea of what we are about and what happened. We always had principles, traditions and principles. This was improving democracy by giving a voice to the people. This was the idea of George Gallup. He was helping, after the Second World War, a lot of countries like Austria or in Germany getting back to democracy. Gallup International, founded in 1947, was the world's first club of the best and independent professionals in social and political research. There was no such an association similar before. Yeah? The legacy of the brand name is still alive today, and it stands for highest quality and highest standards and practices. We have, since a few days, we have new statutes in the association for a better protection of our name, for better governance. We have better membership structures. We now have executive members who take care about the brand and raise extra funds if it's needed. We have the normal full members, and we have associate members, and this is an invitation. I don't want to go in detail here. There's for only 1,200 euro per year, every member from WIN can be associate member in Gallup International, and this is our sign that we want to give to everybody for cooperation, for growth in the future. There's a new leadership team. You know most of the people on the photos. We are a strong network. We now have 45 members today. 5 more applications arrived in the last days. So by mid-2017 we will have 50 members, and we invite more to come. By the end of 2017, we think we can cover 80% of the world to have global reach. But there is another important idea. We are working on a new, completely innovative regional sampling approach, which will help global research to cut costs significantly. We have new clients. Kenji and I were recently at the headquarters of UNESCO talking about a big project which might come up this year. We have new media partners, Bloomberg, BBC, New York Times, Reuters, Financial Times, and more to come. And most important, we have a portfolio of very strong brands. Gallup International, we registered GIA as a new brand, end of year, Voice of the People, and more to come, because that's the value of our association. Thank you very much. I pass on to Ijas, who will give you now some background.
Someone like me who is both Gallup International and WIN, and as the whole group. So you don't have 50, you actually have 100. Shall I proceed? I prepared a short, which I will leave. And thank you, Titos, for having both, which I will leave also as a presentation. I looked up the data for the last 70 years divided into 3 phases. So 70 years. So I will quickly run through, I think have 5 minutes or so, with a lot of photos. Can you just, oh, I have. So that's the co-chairs. Kancha, why don't you come have a seat? And where's Wilma? That's part of the ceremony. Wilma, please. So we put on that in some ways, without these 3 organizations, we probably would not have the profession in its present form today. From just workers to professionals is intermediated by this kind of professional codes and professional organizations. That's why the celebration. And maybe that's the kind of group which could also look forward, as Tito's pointed out, to the need to in the future. This is the kinds of forum which will do that. That's 1947, both for the Gallup International on the left and SOMAR in the middle, a 1948 picture, and Evapor, a later picture, but again representing the founding of the three organizations. This is your conferences around 70 years. This is the 70th. And in fact, it has gone around the world. You see the Taj Mahal, I think 1968, and many of you would trace your own countries. These are only as many as the space on this slide. Otherwise, there'd be 70 such group photos. I hope one later today. The end of the year has 40 years of history, and I put together this picture because these are the people who do that. So we used to request countries to send the people who worked in their country on the end of the year survey. And some of those team members that you might recognize yourself or others, that's the global team which WIN&GALLUP International has built up over the last some years. 40 years in particular, but the last 10 years with the expansion, and the expansion that also came through the WIN membership in the new and emerging economies is responsible for building up this global community that we show here. With many, many such brand building exercises and also bringing free information to the global community on global surveys. This is the Global Hope and Despair. Again, a lot of surveys and at least 5 major books. One of them, the latest one here on your tables today, but there has been, since 2006, several such books coming, some of which displayed here. Again, more publications. And this is the unique and rapid response global polling. The WIN&GALLUP International was the only group, which has responded to these global crises. We don't have the world's opinion on after the 9/11 US action in Afghanistan. The only one was WIN&GALLUP International. Again, on the Iraqi crisis, and when the US attacked Iraq, we don't have any global survey except for WIN&GALLUP International. When the earthquake came in Japan, the tsunami, and the issue came up about nuclear energy, we don't have any global survey except the 48-country survey which WIN&GALLUP International did. When Osama bin Laden was captured in Pakistan, was killed in Pakistan, there is no global survey on opinions about that except the WIN&GALLUP International. So WIN&GALLUP International is very unique in some ways, and that is largely because this structure responds to, it provides free information. So every one of you spend a lot of resources and time to respond to that time, but it lives. I think maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years later, when someone will read the history of this time, this will be the only source available to them. 3 phases. The phase 47 to 1980. This is a global vision but national surveys. And that also says a great deal about our forefathers. Even though they could not do the same survey across all countries, they had the vision for it. And so India and Japan, in particular India, when it was on no one's map in the modern world for modern economies, George Gallup included that in the group. Japan, just emerging from after the war, George Gallup included them. And so it was a global vision, but national surveys. And then we have these books starting to come up. Again, the presentation will be with you. Up until 1980, the largest international survey was in less than 10 countries. But in phase 2, and that's where the end of the year survey is by far and undisputedly the only survey which is global in nature and has been conducted every year since 1977, 40th anniversary of that also got instituted. I put that picture 1980, partly because two of the major things which developed since then were also the Pew Survey and the World Value Survey. The World Value Survey actually originated in this meeting in 1980 in London, our annual conference. So it's later that Professor Engelhardt took us very nicely and took it, but that's the meeting where it happened. And we have Andy Kohut between me, with one circle here, and Mr. Moo Park, whom we would honor later today, on the other, and in between the two of us is Andy Kohut, who founded the Pew Opinion Research many years later. So the end of the year survey, I will not go through this, but you have 40 years of trend data here on do you think the next year will be good or bad. I should go back to the previous survey also to point out to Marita Carballo with a circle on the top, again as a young member joining the association, now president of WIPOR. And I also should point out Johnny Heald's father, whose role in setting up the World Value Survey was crucial. If Johnny's father was not there, we probably would not have, in my assessment, I was at that meeting, there would be no World Value Survey. So these 40 years, about 123 countries in which the end of the year survey was done. In many countries, very long run. Johnny's father made also in marketing research a good deal of money from this because he had a contract with the stock market on hopes about the next year. So marketing research also gains a lot from these kinds of work because it's consumer sentiments for the following year. So we have 123 countries around this. The green represents the year in which the survey was conducted there. Since 2000, we have other players, most prominently the World Value Survey and the Pew Research, also YouGov and Ipsos Mori. But we looked through their files, none of them, except for these three, Gallup International, WIN, World Value Survey, and Pew, really puts the data in a form where it can be used for trends. The others, together with us, probably can do a great service to the marketing research industry, and we will approach Finn for that later, on bringing the consumer sentiments and the consumer profiles in the future. Once we have this, we can look beyond geography to the kind of demographic groups that we have talked earlier. So this is by gender over since from 2008 to 2014, not gender in one country, but gender globally. This is age globally and how age groups as global demographic groups behave as a trend over this period of time. Again, from the end of the year survey, I'm sure can be put to great consumer market research use. This is education globally. We have about 400 million people in colleges and universities around the world. So this kind of survey provides the trend data by education, global education demographic groups. This is Hope's Intercontinental always makes the news that for a variety of reasons, Afro-Asia behaves differently from Euro-America, rising in one, declining in the other. And on democracy, a great deal of views, positive views. And looking ahead, 70 years behind us, I'm sure many more years ahead of us. Thank you very much. And I again thank our guests for joining us to celebrate the occasion and to give the message to the entire industry that we don't work only for our companies. We don't really work only for our companies. And we don't work only for our associations. We actually work for the whole industry. So it'd be too narrow to think just for our company. I think it brings some money, but it doesn't bring us identity. And I doesn't think bring us a family. And our associations are good, such as the WIN and Gallup International Associations, but there's also many more such associations, and the associations that bring them together. That was the main purpose, that at 70 years we rise above ourselves as a company, above our company to our local associations, and then the group of associations that we brought to this forum today. Thank you very much, and we look forward to the next 70 years, whoever of us, I guess not me, might be there. Good luck. Thank you. Thank you. After this, we have many of you might know Nusrat Fateh Ali as a qawwali music. He has a thing that he sings again and again, which means everyone comes and everyone goes. He sings again and again and makes such a mood by saying the very eternal truth that everyone comes and everyone goes. So we saw Mr. Mu Park from 1980 in that photo. We have sadly to announce his passing away. He passed away 2 weeks ago, Mr. Mu Park. And he was a great man, as his obituary, which is also will be circulated to you, shows that he came from a small village in eastern Korea. Born before the war, but then gradually started as a copywriter, then set up his very small company. I said when I met him first in 1980, both of us were struggling with our companies. We could not afford a room in the hotel, in a big hotel in the UK, on the top rooms, so we both rented in the basement. So that's how I knew Mr. Mu Park for the first time, as two of us struggling to set up our companies and attending Gallup International Conference in the basement. But I saw him, he must have gone as a very happy man. I saw him 2 years or 3 years ago, and across the street from the river in Seoul, across the street from the president's office on the other side of the river, he had a Gallup house, 6-floor building that he had built in these 30-some years, coming from his village, starting as a copywriter, building his company. And he drove me to the World Association of Public Opinion Research meeting, for which I had gone in Seoul. So he asked his son, Jay Park, who is now succeeding as chairman, to please come, like a father, come and drive Ijaz and me to the Vapor conference. And at Vapor conference, I recognized that the whole industry in the region suddenly was thanking me. We thanked you for bringing Mr. Mu Park to the meeting. So he was recognized as the father of opinion polling in Korea and in the region. We sent him our condolences. Many of you individually sent, and Stephen, who's representing Korea here, told me that the family conveys to you the gratitude on their behalf for all the letters that you wrote to them. I would now request you to have a minute of silence honoring his passing away. So, amen and thank you.
Thank you, Ijaz. Just a moment here. After all my speech about technology, this is how Ijaz keeps time for the speakers. Okay.
That's true.
I don't seem to be getting through to you guys.
Yeah, so the world changes social media. Dr. Wong gave you that message. I changed the social media.
So, we're running a little bit late as usual. We've pushed lunch for 20 minutes to 1 o'clock. Please have a coffee break now. Relax a little bit, and then we go to our workshops. There should be a Chiara is responsible to notify you where each workshop takes place, and there should be signs outside. Thank you very much.